Hi, everybody. I just get so many questions, and some of them are asked, quite a number of times. And so I thought I'd just go ahead and just take a few moments just to tell you a little bit. There's far more than I have time for right now, but a little bit of why I would choose my layout method over the grid. The grid is something that if you're used to, continue using it, and maybe you can experiment with some of the ways that I lay out too, so that you can broaden your your ability to see. And that's mainly why mine is I think worth learning, because it opens up your whole ability to see important angles and understand the mechanics behind laying out a drawing, and it gradually gets you into the direction of freehanding. And I know a lot of you would like to do that, don't feel like you're capable, but if you start seeing different and realize the elements that really go into good proportion and finding characteristics and all those little things that make that like the person or the object or the scene that you're trying to draw, capturing the essence of it. So there's certain things. I don't use the grid. I mean, I could. May not be even as good as some of you out there that use it all the time, but I have some of the drawbacks, and that's what I wanted to kind of face right now or talk to you about. This is something that takes a lot of extra work as far as I'm concerned. I went ahead and I did my incremental half-inch on this paper. Looking at my reference that I have, there is, and I gotta find it, there is always a size relationship between what you're looking at and what you actually want to actually have your drawing become in size relationship, proportion, all those different things. And so what I did on here is I decided, well, I'm going to go 1/4 inch all the way around my reference. And so I made my little marks on here and whatever. And then if I am going to duplicate that on here, I want to enlarge it. And so I went ahead and went, instead of a 1/4 inch, I went 1/2 inch increments. Now 1/2 inch is going to actually give you 4 times the drawing that you are actually, a 1/4 inch is actually half an inch. You all know that. And so you want to be able to decide your size relationship. So if you were working on something very small, you could do it in 1/8 of an inch increments on your reference and make it an inch if you were doing a great big huge drawing. And so you kind of have to be used to how am I going to decide on the size relationship, and what size am I going to end up with. Okay, so that's why I'm telling you this is based on a 1/4 inch, and this is on a 1/2 inch. That's because then I can go ahead and pick out the square that's equivalent to this, and end up by having a natural enlargement. And you don't have to decide by seeing. You just go by the squares and draw whatever part is going to be in that vicinity. I'm probably not describing it exactly like I did. It might be nice, but I'm just going to put a few lines on here. You have to be able to take the time to do this, and then you have to be able to take the time to do the graph. And this is part of the reason that I like to avoid it. It seems like, maybe some of you, again, have a lot of experience with it. It seems like, though, that this is time consuming, doing a lot more drawing than I'm going to be able to, take advantage of, except for the fact I'll have the accuracy. And so when you're, I had my ruler slip. So when you're doing this, you want to be able to have it going in vertical and horizontal lines. And that will give you little squares. The squares are what you say, well, okay, if I intersect this here, I'll be able to duplicate that same square on my reference as I have here. Okay, I'm just going to do this very quickly. You must see that I'm doing it a little sloppy in some ways, because this is really just illustrating a whole nother point. Okay, so now let's get just a few more lines. I would make the whole piece of art paper in this grid. so that I'm always aware of my orientation. I'm always having something that I can transfer over. And so now I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the vertical ones. I'm just going to do a little space here. Otherwise, this will take a lot of time and we're not even going to actually use it. Okay, let me go here. And you want to make sure that you stay on the grid marks here, because it's amazing how little it takes to get way off. And I think that there's benefit to the grid, and you will observe a lot of things and start developing those skills of copying a drawing over. But I want to show you a couple other things about it. I have what you call the straight edge and divider method, for lack of a better term. I use them both, and so it's easy for me to not have to have too many lines and too much figuring. When I decide on the size relationship, I don't have to do a whole lot. I just want to capture that main angle. Let me see. Let's just do this. If I'm looking at my reference, I'm always trying to find that slight little angle. And so you can get an attitude, you can get a personality, you can get all kinds of things by deciding where is this on my paper. And if you want to go ahead and decide, well, okay, it's right here. Well, I want to go ahead and put a line through both corners of the eye so that I capture one of those main characteristics. The tilt, the head is going to be having maybe a little question mark. So you might, put your, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, when I'm going like this, I mean, it's different than if I'm just straight on. Oh, now I can't even get myself level. But if I want to catch that attitude a little bit, and I want to be able to maybe even see the difference between one eye and the other, I can go ahead and capture those things with my layout method. And so when I come over here onto this, I would want the relationship here on the paper. But how am I going to transfer this to the paper? That line that goes through there, and that's maybe hard to see. Well, I want to decide on my placement. I'm going to put a dot. I'm going to put this over here. There's a little more to it than this, but I want to put this over here and put this ruler right, or this straight edge right on that plane, not an airplane, but on that level, by keeping this perfectly parallel. Okay, and so now my drawing is all oriented around maybe a slight tilt of the head. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to just do a very static, drawing that looks like a mugshot. I want whatever personality she has in here to actually take it out of that and making it into something that expresses her. And I am just always amazed at how little it takes. Some of the tiniest little things will command the whole thing. And sometimes you're looking for what's wrong with this drawing. Okay, so now, if I'm going to go ahead and do this, I would want to draw my grid on here. And now I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I would go ahead and draw it because I have these incremental, placement, the 1/4 inch. This is a 1/2 inch, remember, apart. And so the 1/4 inch squares represent the 1/2 inch on here. And so that means that it's going to be 4 times. When you double a measurement on your drawing, you are actually having 4 times, because this is actually like this, because it's doubling the measurement this way and doubling it this way. And now the next thing I want to be able to decide is, if I'm copying this, I want to know where does that break the line. So I'm not going to copy her face. I just want to let you know that when I'm doing this and I'm saying, well, it's about there on that square, and I'm going to just visualize how it is going to be. Let's do that. Okay. Now, if I am looking at this with values and things like that, now I want to start maybe contouring it. Let's go outside of this. I know it's not going to be exactly like a portrait at all, but I want to be able to learn how to make it look like it has depth and dimension and on all those things. So if there's dark on the outside of this, I can go ahead and make those things so that it looks like there's darkness behind it and this is coming forward. Okay, now if I want to be able to draw freehand, yes, this will help you know what the size and shape of her head is, but this is clean because I don't have any squares on here. If I do this, now I'm hard put to get the grid off of there without actually lightening up places that, you know, I wanted to be able to have that be darker behind. I may not be able to get all this off. And as I'm drawing, you know, I'm going to end up by seeing that ghosting, that light bunch of squares, at least some of the time. And I don't want to have that. And these are so different than the actual curves of something else you're drawing that they always are more noticeable because they don't blend in. And you want to make sure that you're not using too much pressure. You want to be able to have the opportunity to, you know, use a gliding, pulling away from and not pointing your pencil at the paper will help you keep from scoring it, or maybe catching even on the texture of the paper. I want to be able to basically drag my pencil along so that it's always coming away from the starting point. You know, it'll make it a lot easier to get these grid marks out of there. But I've seen many people drawing something that is, these are noticeable, and I don't want them there. And so when I'm doing that, again, I want to be able to get that off of there. And I don't want to have to erase the drawing that I just put because I was going by the grid. All right? It's really very basic. But my method over here is, all right, I want to be able to now decide where is another good pivot point. I'm going to use this right here, right Cupid's bow, right in the middle of her lips there, and I want to find out maybe something else that I can make sure that I'm documenting on here so that I have a horizontal. It's going to be a diagonal, but anyway, another opportunity for me to be able to see something to intersect later, and I'll just show you how to do that. Now I want a size relationship. The size relationship was two grids, one that's smaller and one that's larger, and I'm going to draw this so that it fits on this, because I'm just going to use where does it intersect the square, and you know, does it come from the corner and go over to the other corner, or whatever it happens to be, and so I can pretty much copy that. But with this, I'm going to pick out this place that I want to be able to have that line, and you can see it coming through here, I hope. And then I'm going to pick out a place that I can have as a pivot point. Probably could have illustrated this just a little different, but I just want to make a couple quick points. My method here is, okay, right there, wherever I decide, right there is my pivot point. The distance between this and where these two lines, these bearing lines, intersect is the opportunity for you to decide the ratio. If I want this picture twice as big, well, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at the measurement between those two. Yeah. And it looks like it's, you know, 2.5 inches. Let's just say it's that. Okay, I want to make mine 5 inches on here because I want to enlarge it twice the size. So I'm going to go here, and now duplicate this angle, this vertical angle. We'll call it vertical because it's going from the bottom up to the top. And we're going to go to that pivot point. You know, the bearing line between the two angles. Okay, now we're going to come up here. Let's get this. Oh, shoot. I forgot you can't see that. Anyway, I want to be able to have that line duplicated on here. So I needed a long enough ruler, and I forgot you can't see that on the camera. But maybe you'll be able to still get it. Watch the video, how to lay out drawing accurately every time, I think it is. Okay, so now I have an equivalent to this, and then I have my pivot point. The reason I want this pivot point there, and I'm going to make a mark on there, like I said, it's going to be, let's go 5 inches, because I'm just basically doubling that 2.5 inches that I measured before. And here will be my pivot point, so that's an equivalent. Here's my main bearing line, or bearing point. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this longer ruler, and I'm going to always have this in line with my drawing, whatever I want to find now. When I'm down here, I want to have the edge right on that pivot point. Okay, so I'm going to want to come over and find out what the other corner of the eye is. So I'm going to just put that over there. And I'm going to make sure that that edge is going right through that pivot point. And here's the other part of the eye. That is the other corner. So when I do this, I still have an opportunity to exercise my ability to visualize it and do a little practicing on freehand and whatever, see how it angles into another part, okay, and see how much lower it is on that. So this is pretty shallow, but there I have an idea what I was trying to document by putting a dot here and putting a dot there, okay. And so then I want to be able to keep this parallel. I should have gotten another camera involved here, but I want to be able to have this up against this paper. The way I do that is I mount this on an old piece of my paper that I normally draw on. I just use some spray adhesive, make sure I cut it as square as I can, and then it will slide along here very easily and butt up against the actual art paper you're going to use. And I can't go out anymore. And let's go over here to the other eye, the other corner of the other eye. See, so I have it on the pivot point. The ruler's right on the pivot point up to what I want to document on that intersects this line, okay? And as I do that, I can do that every single time I want to and keep this parallel. And then we have the opportunity to document where that corner is. You have to hold everything in place. That's one of the things that, so here's that outside corner of this eye, okay? And then we have this, and I'm not going to belabor this, I'm just going to tell you that this will always, if you run it through the pivot point up to what you want to find that intersects this line, you're always going to be in the right ratio. It automatically does. You don't have to draw a bunch of squares. You don't have to draw, you know, something that's going to take a lot of time. And so if it's going through the pivot point here, I want it to be able to go through that same pivot point on my drawing. Okay, so let's go do that inside tear duct corner. And so it's going from that pivot point up to what I want to find on this horizontal line. And it isn't really a demonstration about all that right now, but I'm going to make sure that if it's on the pivot line here, that it is going to be on my pivot line here. Okay, and so now I want to just remind myself, what did I just draw? What part was I trying to capture? So that I'm looking for curves and different things. And so I know that my eye is there, and it reminds me, because I'm going to go ahead and maybe, connect dots and whatever. But what I'm trying to just say, even though this isn't, full detailed demonstration, is I am only working with a point instead of a grid. So over here, it's right on that line. Over here, it's a little bit below the line, and yet I get to visualize that and copy it over just. And I can correct it later if I find that it wasn't quite enough. But it gives me an opportunity to know. I can look for any part. I can look for where the iris intersects that line. I can look for, the eyelashes or the pupil or whatever are on this person here. And I can enlarge it. Depending on how much I've increased this distance from this point to this point. Okay, so the other one is going to be difficult, or at least time consuming. Somebody just asked that question. Would a grid method be faster for layout? Why, I have to do so much more with this. And I have this ghosting of this graph in here, and I realize I didn't draw this on here. I just started drawing something so you could see. And so I can gradually do this, but then I still, again, have this out. If I had to remove it before I started putting in my, values and maybe some detail, then I would maybe have too little information to really make it worth, the while of laying out this grid. Because I don't want to erase it first and then do it. I want to be able to have these vertical and horizontal lines so that I can see exactly what part of this square that I'm actually, cutting off. This just looks like it's about 2/3 or maybe less, up to this point, instead of going all the way to the top. And I don't like to take the time. And also, this out here outside the perimeter of my picture, my drawing, is also sometimes hard to get off the paper. So you have that ghosting of grids. Also, this gives me the opportunity, this one gives me the opportunity of only drawing what I think is important for me to see. And I can continue without having all of these lines going like so, and making it that much more work to remove, and it just keeps going on and on. For me, I'm just used to this. If you want to use the grid method, that's fine, but I'm just saying then you have to really be careful, to do this very light, all these parts very light so you can take it off. This is one of the secrets of what I think is important when I'm drawing. I want to be able to make changes. So I want to be able to have it very light so that I can remove it and correct it and make adjustments and continue correcting those things that I might see if I walked away from my drawing and then came back. And you're always getting a whole fresh look at something. You say, well, how did I do that? It seems like the eye needs to be, higher or whatever. I'm always looking for the highest point on a part. So if the eye is over here and from here to here, it looks like it's not in the center, I want to notice that. And then I'll go ahead and have the opportunity to realize where I'm centering this iris. And anyway, you can get all the information you want on there, whether you're using a grid or not. And but I just like that there's less drawing to do when I'm drawing with my straight edge and divider, because I only have to put the points that is going to be a reference for that particular length or width or height, and not have to spend too much time drawing all of the grid and the added problem of having it show. So I like to be able to layer And if I'm layering values on, and just like I'm doing here, it is very light. If I'm layering the values on, I can still see this going through here. And it doesn't look like a human or a nice flow and grace mark or a line. So okay, anyway, that's all I wanted to be able to say answering the question. It's a lot more work for me, time consuming, has all this that's going to be time consuming trying to get off, and I can easily decide a size relationship by instead making a mark here and a mark there, once I decide on my bearing lines, and maybe double or 1.5 times or whatever. I can even just eyeball it and decide, well, this is going to be an opportunity for me to see the relationship between the distance here and the distance here. And if you want to go ahead, drawing perfectly every time, I think it is. And it's the layout method. And so I hope that'll help you, just to give you a quick answer. It's probably very quick, but take a look at it and see if you can try to practice it every once in a while, even though you may not always use it. You can always fall back on your grid and use that as your comfort zone, and then continue with the other one, because it starts teaching you again how to do something with maybe no lines. And there's a lot of different ways that you can use angles and things to make sure that you're having a very solid ratio increase, or alignments that show you, well, this corner goes right up to the iris, the edge of the iris there. So you can always use that straight edge or whatever to verify the angle. It looks like this corner is up just a little higher than that one. And that's the same thing with the eyes. It looks like this is a little higher than that one. And yet you can start seeing how to do that by visual perception. And that is giving you the opportunity to freehand. So anyway, I hope this helped a little bit. And I realize it could have been a little longer or a little bit more descriptive, but this will give you an idea. So thank you. And I'll try to answer some other questions. So next time, bye.